I'm Jimmy Fallon.
I'm Rachel Campos-Duffy.
I'm Will Kane, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, February 10th, 2023. I'm Lisa Brady. What do spy balloons tell us about China? And is the American public getting the message?
If our public writ large is not, convinced that we're in a 21st century Cold War with China, I mean, at this point, I think we should all understand that's exactly where we're at.
I'm Dave Anthony. Sunday's Super Bowl will make history. The first where both starting quarterbacks are black. A big deal to Doug Williams. He was the first black QB to start and win the big game 35 years ago.
I take my hat off to these guys, and hopefully we don't be talking about this again. We don't have no reason to, because you only have two quarterbacks in a game, and they're about to break that barrier.
And I'm Greg Jarrett. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
The spy balloon shot down by the U.S. military last weekend is now believed to be part of a fleet, a surveillance program run by the Chinese military for years, sending spy craft over 5 continents.
The truth is, we think we know what they were going to collect. We don't know. That scares the hell out of me.
Montana Democratic Senator John Tester at a hearing yesterday where Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman called the People's Republic of China the only competitor with the intent and means to reshape the international order.
A fact borne out in the PRC's provocations in the South China Sea, its human rights abuses, its use of economic coercion, its threatening behavior against Taiwan, and, of course, what we have just witnessed.
President Biden has dismissed the idea that shooting down the balloon will worsen relations, telling PBS NewsHour,
I made it real clear to Xi Jinping that we're going to compete fully with China, but we're not looking for conflict.
There were classified briefings for the House and Senate yesterday, with many Republicans still accusing the president of being soft on China, including Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
No nation state, particularly an adversary, should be able to fly any platform over the airspace of the United States without it being confronted and stopped.
While many Democrats say the eventual shoot-down showed U.S. resolve, the Pentagon says there have been previous incursions during the Biden and Trump administrations, but that's only in hindsight. Those balloons weren't detected at the time.
It's my responsibility to detect threats to North America. I will tell you that we did not detect those threats. And that's a domain awareness gap that we have to figure out.
Air Force General Glenn Van Herk, the head of both U.S. Northern Command and NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, says as this balloon was approaching Alaska, he couldn't take immediate action because it wasn't demonstrating a hostile act or intent.
I mean, I think it fits with their espionage strategy. They do some super sleuthy, clandestine espionage, and then they also just flood the zone with discoverable operations.
Dan Hoffman is a retired CIA senior clandestine services officer and a Fox News contributor.
I'm not that surprised. I think it's very inexpensive for them to run these sorts of operations. And with the persistent reconnaissance that an air balloon gives you, it's clearly valuable. And look, they violate Taiwan's airspace on a very regular basis. This is standard modus operandi for communist China.
You mentioned the word persistent surveillance, and I'm guessing that's why they would go this route when they have satellites they can use instead of balloons.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the questions that the House and the Senate intelligence committees in particular will be asking. What exactly did China vacuum up with this spy balloon? They had a massive payload there, and the persistent reconnaissance would allow them access to mobile communications, not just, we assume it's like geospatial, like Google Earth stuff, but I mean, it's probably designed to target communications around key military installations and other things. And that's a key requirement for our intelligence community. What exactly was China accomplishing with this spy mission? And why are they doing it all over the world? I know the State Department has briefed a number of nations on China's espionage, and hopefully we'll learn more as the days go by.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to the extent that it would be beneficial to them to be able to sort of, hover over various sensitive sites like this. What about this notion that we can jam the signals, that we can sort of prevent them from getting what they're trying to get once we know that they're there?
It's possible. Maybe they have counter jamming devices. That's also just a really good question to ask. China has been extremely bellicose about their espionage. I mean, remember that they hacked into OPM and stole personal data for our government employees. They ripped off the plans for the F-35 and stole intellectual property. I mean, this is what they do. Now, the president wasn't wrong when he said, hey, that's China. Yeah, look at Huawei and TikTok. And then, militarizing the South China Sea. And they cover it up with their wolf warrior diplomacy, propaganda, where they just lie every word out of their mouth, just like the Soviets did back in the day. If our public writ large is not, convinced that we're in a 21st century Cold War with China, I mean, at this point, I think we should all understand that's exactly where we're at.
Intelligence officials, including the FBI director, have warned for years about China targeting us in various ways, including some of the ways you mentioned, efforts to learn our secrets, in essence. Is it just an issue of the Chinese government wanting to be able to compete? And if so, why wouldn't they want to be able to do that on their own, even just as a matter of pride?
Okay, so first of all, President Xi has stated that China wants to be the strongest military power by 2049. The problem for China is that they're a command communist economy. They don't do innovation, which is what is the hallmark of a free democracy like ours. And so just like the Soviets before them, the only way that China can develop artificial intelligence and other key technological advances is just to steal them from others who are steps ahead of them, because they're not going to do the innovation in China. That's what, the greatest power of the United States military is our free market. That's what gives us the strength to power on with the most advanced technology that enables our military to be the best in the world. And forget about pride, of ownership. They're just going to steal stuff. It's what they do. And we have to do a better job of protecting our own intellectual property. Otherwise, China will gain from it.
Some lawmakers have called for reinstating what the Trump administration had called the China Initiative, targeting Chinese scientists and professors at U.S. universities over intellectual property theft concerns or even espionage suspicions. That program, though, ended up raising a broader question of essentially balance between intelligence concerns and civil rights. Is it possible to be so concerned about the Chinese government and what they're up to that we jeopardize coordination that can actually help us, on certain issues?
So those civil rights apply to U.S. citizens. They don't apply to Chinese nationals who are over here doing whatever they're doing. And, remember that in 2015, China passed a law which stated that every one of their businesses must, by law, do the bidding of China's intelligence service, the Ministry of State Security. So any Chinese businessman, anybody traveling anywhere overseas has got to do exactly as the Chinese government intelligence service wishes. And so absolutely, I think any Chinese national who travels to the United States, we need to be concerned about that. We need to shut down, as we've begun to, their Confucius institutes where they teach Chinese, but they're also just throwing out lots of propaganda at our universities. China is using our open system against us. And yes, that's the strength of our country, a wide open cyberspace and a free and open democracy. And they're going to use it against us, just as Putin has. But we've got to shore up our defenses.
There was that case in Houston in 2020 of a Chinese consulate being shut down, accused of being a hub, of various malign activities. There are hundreds of consulates from various countries across the U.S., though. Should we be paying more attention to those in general?
Well, we do pay a lot of attention to those official installations. The challenge we face with China, though, to get back to your last point, is that it's not just the official consulates or their embassy in Washington. It's just regular Chinese businesses or Chinese nationals who come to the United States and steal stuff. It's what they do. And I'm sorry we have to mistrust and verify every one of them But that's not our fault. That's the fault of the communist Chinese regime, which is using their own people to serve their nefarious interests. If you want to blame somebody, blame Xi Jinping and the communist Chinese government. Those are the ones who are at fault. And, the FBI certainly is not doing that out of some racial or ethnic bias. It's just because the geopolitics are what they are.
Chinese entities have also been buying up American farmland, often near military bases. What does China gain from having these properties?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely are, again, trying to exploit our free and open commerce, to purchase land in places that give them, an opportunity to steal our secrets. Folks can look it up on the internet. Devil's River, part of the Rio Grande drainage basin, located in Valverde County in southwestern Texas, known for its pristine water and ecotourism. Going back to 2015, GH America Investment Group, that's a Chinese subsidiary, they bought 100,000 acres of property in and around the Devil's River Conservancy. Why? Well, there were opportunities for them to steal our secrets because they're near an Air Force base, and Laughlin Air Force Base, which is the Air Force's premier training facility, graduates hundreds of pilots per year. So that's why the Chinese are doing it, and we need to prevent, in my view at least, foreigners from buying from criteria countries like China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. My goodness, why should they be allowed to buy property in our country, especially China? The guy who was running this GH America, it was connected to Chinese intelligence.
There has been some pushback lately over concerns about projects planned by Chinese-owned companies or data concerns, for instance, with TikTok and the various state bans that have erupted. Is the U.S. government, though, doing enough to not only play defense with China's data collection of us, but to protect us from their spies and collect their data?
So there's two ways to protect us. One is it's a fine line there. We'd like for our cyberspace to be wide open, but when it's wide open, our adversaries will exploit it. So we have to look at banning certain apps like TikTok, and we should ban it. But we should also be explaining to our citizens why we're doing it, because it's an opportunity for China to collect the information they need to build out their artificial intelligence programs. But we also conduct our own advanced offensive cyber operations. Cyber Command does that, and they've certainly increased the intensity and the focus of those operations over the past, say, 5 to 6 years. And that's part of it. Conducting cyber operations against our adversaries, which not only disable our adversaries' capabilities, but also collect intelligence on what they're doing against us. And that way we understand, what they're up to and how we can better defend ourselves.
Are there enough things happening behind the scenes, though? Do you think that Americans can feel secure with this situation right now?
Well, I think when you see a spy balloon hovering above our country for a whole week, it makes people, justifiably concerned. That typically the job of our intelligence services, is one that is such that people shouldn't be thinking about it every day. Like, your question is certainly justifiable. And the last point I would make here, it's important for our public servants, including the president, to use the bully pulpit and explain to our citizens what sort of confrontation we are involved in with China this century. I think there would be value there for our population writ large, because when something like this, spy balloon caper happens, it does make people question, are we doing enough?
Dan Hoffman, retired CIA Senior Clandestine Services Officer and Fox News contributor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This is Greg Jarrett with your Fox News commentary coming up.
It's almost always the most watched TV event of the year, the Super Bowl. Number 57 this year, on Sunday in Arizona, on Fox this time. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The NFC champions are led by quarterback Jalen Hurts.
To even have this opportunity in front of us is a huge blessing. And I think it's only a testament to the work we put in as a team, every man on this team. So we'll see what happens.
For the AFC champion Chiefs, It's their third trip in 4 years. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, won it in 2020. He comes into this one nursing an ankle injury he says is getting better.
It's going to be definitely better, more mobile, be able to move around a little bit better for sure, and then we'll see on game day how close to 100% I can be.
This Jalen Hurts-Patrick Mahomes matchup is unlike any other in the Super Bowl. It's the first one featuring two black starting quarterbacks, and that is a big deal to Doug Williams.
You know what? It is. You realize history was about to be made.
He was a pioneer playing in Super Bowl 22.
35 years ago, I played in the first Super Bowl for a black quarterback and was able to win it and become champions and even named MVP.
The Washington Redskins won that day, 42-10 over the Denver Broncos. Since then, 6 other black QBs have been in the Super Bowl. Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, they all lost. But Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes have won.
You look at it realistically, it shouldn't have happened. If the opportunity was given to guys before me, you know, the James Harrison, Marlon Briscoe, and Joe Gilliam, David Mays, John Walton, if they had been given the same opportunity, all this we talking about today could have been done, you know, years ago, but it didn't happen. So we got to go with what's happening today. And we got two young, good quarterbacks playing in this game, and they just so happen to be black.
Why has it taken so long, in your opinion? We now have more black quarterbacks in the league for sure.
Well, we do have more black quarterbacks in the league. Matter of fact, this past season, that was 11 starting quarterbacks in the National Football League, which is, to me, it's pretty good. You know, in the next couple of years, I'm saying 5 to 10 years, half of the quarterbacks in the league probably going to be black. And I think the mind has been open a little bit more, not so much the fact that they are black, the fact that they can play the position, they can think. You know, that's usually be the myth on the black quarterback, that they couldn't win the game, they couldn't lead a team because they're not smart enough, and all the things that was out there. But we've had 8 guys to play in that game, and all of them had to be smart. You know, you can't play the position no matter how you play it. You can't play it if you're not smart. So I'll take my hat off to these guys, and hopefully we don't be talking about this again. We don't have no reason to, because you know, you only have 2 quarterbacks in a game, and they about to break that barrier, so we won't have to deal with this anymore.
When it came down 35 years ago, though, I mean, you had been playing in the NFL since the late 70s, back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Did you hear all that? Did you hear people say, well, how can he can't play the game, or he's not going to be as good as the other quarterbacks? Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear that, but you knew that was people. And I'm not going to say that some of the media and a lot of the other people, you know, that was something unusual to them. A black quarterback leading your football team, that don't happen. But that's the mindset of so many people. But we also, now you got to get out that mindset and look at it from a realistic standpoint. Yeah, race does matter, whether you want to admit it or not. But at the same time, we should get over it and understand that what is happening on Sunday is the fact that that's what America looks like.
Patrick Mahomes has been terrific ever since he came into the league. I mean, a lot of people think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. That's up for debate. You never know, some people like other guys. But Jalen Hurts has suddenly rushed onto the scene as well. And I say rushed because he's set a record with touchdowns as a rushing quarterback. He can also throw the football. The position's changed some since you played, right, Doug?
Well, let me say this about Jalen. You know, Jalen has reinvented himself, showing people that he's capable of throwing the ball from the pocket. Now, what the rush part of it put a lot of pressure on the other team defensive coordinator. And plus, he got an offensive line that he feel comfortable with. So at the end of the day, you got 2 guys who are capable of beating you from the pocket, but also, if you don't watch out, they can beat you with their legs.
Patrick Mahomes is really a very difficult quarterback to stop because his scrambling ability is a little different. He does these things, like he'll flick the football in a certain way or throw it in a certain way or that guys didn't do before.
Well, Patrick Mahomes, he don't even amaze me no more. It ain't even, you don't even look at it. That's an ordinary football game when Patrick plays in it because he's been doing that for the last 5 years. And I think what it tells you about Patrick, he's always a thinking quarterback. I mean, I saw him the other day roll to his left. They was about to sack him. He throws it in the left, put it in his left hand and throw it out in the flat. Things like that don't happen. Most quarterbacks want to look for a place to fall and try to protect the football. But Patrick Mahomes is a different individual. But he's all around. Whatever you want. His arm talent is so much different because he can tweak his arm any way you can imagine to throw the football, and he throw it with accuracy.
You played and won a championship with the Redskins. Now the Commanders, you're an advisor to the Commanders. So you'd think you're an NFC guy rooting for the Super Bowl this time around. But Philadelphia is also a division rival. Do you have a rooting interest?
No, my thing is the way I look at this whole situation, I can't win. I've already won, and my job is not just to watch two young quarterbacks in the NFL do it out in the Super Bowl who just happen to be black. I'm not going to pull for anybody. Right.
Take us back to your trip to the Super Bowl 35 years ago. What's it like to be there? You're the starting quarterback of an NFL team, and you're getting ready for the Super Bowl. What is it like?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say starting quarterback. And, my whole mentality that whole week was not about me being black. I made sure that I didn't get caught up in that because I could have easily got caught up in being black. I knew what color I was. Nobody had to tell me that. But the fact that my job was to be the quarterback of the Washington Redskins and to execute, I made sure during the game, that was my whole total picture, is that you are the quarterback. Now, who just happened to be black.
How hard is it to focus on the game itself? The Super Bowl is such a big event. As a player, is it hard, or was it easy to put a laser focus and block it all out?
I think you say that it's a big event, but remember this, the players got to remember this. The event ain't for you. The event for corporate America. You know how many parties they have around the Super Bowl? Everybody got a party.
Yeah.
And the party ain't for the players. Your job is to go to practice, meet the media, go to meetings, study the playbook, go to bed, wake up the next day and do the same thing. So that lets you know that ain't for you. On Sundays, there's a football game that's going to be played. And you got to face that just like you face any other game the 17 to 16 weeks before the Super Bowl.
Talk about the game. What was it like? You're playing Denver. You're down 10-0. Take us back to that.
Well, you know what? The game itself, first of all, that Saturday before the game, I had a root canal.
Oh.
So I didn't practice that Saturday.
Ouch.
So, but I was fortunate enough not to have any pain on Sunday. And the game was the most important thing. And, when we went out that whole week, we had a great week of practice. Physically, we knew we was the better football team. And the biggest play of the game, to be honest with you, was the fact that we recovered a fumble that we fumbled when they kicked off to us the next time. Ricky Sanders fumbled on the kickoff, but we was fortunate enough to get the ball back. And that kept us from being down maybe 17-0 or even 13-0.
Yeah, because that was down 17-0. Maybe there's a mental difference.
It's been a big mental difference.
Yeah,
and we got the ball back. The first quarter, nothing was going right. I'm looking at Gary Clark to my left side, hit him in the hand, and he dropped the ball, which he don't usually do. And I went back to pass, and I slipped and hyperextended my knee. Didn't know whether or not I was going to come back in, so I told the trainer, don't touch me. If I stand up and walk off this field, I was going to finish it.
Yeah.
And that happened. I went to the sideline, came back, kicked the ball to Denver. They couldn't do anything with it. They punted to us. We got the ball on the 20-yard line, and the very next play, Ricky Sanders for 80. And at that particular time, we had a ball game. And it's amazing how we did it. Second quarter, we had 18 plays. Only 18 plays, we was able to score 35 points in 18 plays.
That's amazing. And, of course, you threw 4 touchdown passes. No one had ever done that before in one quarter of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's one of the people always ask me, were you in a zone? Well, you know what? It's hard for one individual to get in the zone. I think the whole team was in a zone.
So you win the game. You're the MVP. You set a record with 340 yards passing. You're on top of the world. That had to be an amazing moment.
Well, it was a moment that I think every player in the National Football League wants. You know, Tom Brady had it 7 times.
Well, he's different.
He's out the hemisphere. We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I don't care who you are. One time you got to get there. You know, it's hard to explain. And for me, walking off there as the first black quarterback to play in the Super Bowl and to win it, so many things went through my mind. You know, I thought about the people who doubted me, some of the harsh things they said during that time. I thought about the guys that did not get the opportunity that I had. I thought about everything. And, was fortunate enough to walk off the field and walk into Coach Robinson, where we both in the tunnel, we both hugged each other and cried and things like that. And he told me, he said, "Hey, you don't even understand." He said, "You too young." I was 32 at that time, but he told me, "You too young to understand." And Coach Rob said, and the other part was the fact that I got up off the turf when I got hurt. He said, "Hellcat, you didn't stay down. You got up off the turf." And he was happy about that.
So one last time, Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes? Who do you think is going to win and maybe be the MVP?
Patrick and Jalen.
I knew I wasn't going to get an answer, but I had to try. Listen, I really appreciated spending some time with you. Congratulations again, 35 years later, for your Super Bowl win as MVP. And Doug Williams, now the senior advisor to the team president for the Washington Commanders. A real honor to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
David Balogun is just 9 years old, but instead of being in the 4th grade like most kids his age, he's already finished high school. He has become the youngest student to graduate from Reach Cyber Charter School, based in Harrisburg, which offers accelerated pacing online courses. He has the accolades that go with his accomplishment, too, like getting the 2022 Distinguished Student Award from the Pennsylvania Association of Gifted Education. Balogun will receive his diploma in June with the other graduates, but has already started taking college-level courses and says he's considering a career in either engineering, chemistry, or software development. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com.
It's time for your Fox News commentary.
Greg Jarrett.
What's on your mind?
Former top Twitter executives who censored the Hunter Biden laptop story in advance of the 2020 presidential election finally admitted on Wednesday it was wrong to do so. That was their testimony during a contentious hearing conducted by the House Oversight Committee. The story published by the New York Post was accurate, and the laptop's incriminating contents were real. Its suppression by social media companies, including Twitter, may have helped Joe Biden get elected. Reams of evidence presented at the hearing revealed how the FBI worked in concert with Twitter to kill the story. The committee subpoenaed James Baker, a key witness. He once served as general counsel for James Comey's FBI, but then he joined Twitter several months before the election. Baker, you'll recall, was instrumental in pushing the Russia collusion hoax in a lawless effort to drive Donald Trump from office. But during the hearing, Baker falsely portrayed himself as the voice of reason, who urged caution in censoring the story. Not true. Internal emails and other documents disclosed as part of the Twitter files show that the opposite is the case. He dismissed the laptop as hacked and the contents as fake, while arguing in favor of killing the story. Unlike Baker, the company's head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, was far more candid in his testimony. When asked if he believed the laptop was Russian disinformation, he replied, "I didn't then, and I don't now." When the story emerged on October 14, 2020, Roth argued it didn't violate any of Twitter's policies and should not be censored. But he was overruled by executives above him, and that's where Baker played an instrumental role. Roth was already on record in sworn declarations saying that the FBI was behind the social media censorship. Every day, the Bureau was sending requests, demands, if you will, to terminate tweets, shadow ban conservatives, and banish accounts they just didn't like. In other words, the FBI was closely collaborating with Twitter to diminish the free speech rights of millions of people. Representative Jim Jordan noted during the hearing that Twitter got played by the FBI. Well, they certainly did, but deliberately so. Representative Pete Sessions remarked that Twitter got caught and Twitter got bought. He's right. Smoking gun documents show the FBI shelled out $3.5 million in taxpayer money for the company to process its so-called moderation requests. There's nothing silly, the word one Democrat used, about Congress investigating government corruption involving the president's family and maybe the president himself. The committee chair, James Comer, pointed all of this out when he explained that the laptop harbors evidence that Joe Biden's son reaped millions of dollars from America's adversaries. Emails, witness statements, other records suggest the father was complicit in the, quote, Biden family influence peddling. Comer concluded, national security may be compromised. Whether America's security is in jeopardy is certainly worth investigating. I'm Greg Jarrett, Fox News.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. And now, stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. Listen ad-free on Fox News Podcasts Plus on Apple Podcasts. And Prime members can listen to the show ad-free on Amazon Music. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. Did you hear the news? Now you can. With instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
It's the latest when you need it, on demand from Fox News and Amazon Alexa.